History has a dark sense of humor. Take a period of absolute chaos, like ancient China's Warring States era, 250-year-long free-for-all, where 7 major states were trying to murder each other into oblivion. It's the kind of violent, messy situation that makes people desperate for a solution. Any solution. And when someone finally came along with one, it was brilliantly simple and profoundly terrifying. The idea was that the only way to stop people from fighting each other is to make them more afraid of you than they are of anyone else. It's a management style of sorts. A very, very aggressive management style that reshaped a subcontinent and left a legacy of, well, let's call it ruthless efficiency. Our first contender for the grand prize is the Qin dynasty. Before they were a dynasty, they were just another state, until they adopted a political philosophy called legalism. This wasn't about lofty ideals or the goodness of humanity. Legalism operated on the assumption that every single person is, at their core, a selfish, lazy creature who will only respond to 2 things: draconian punishments and the occasional tiny reward. Think of it as the universe's worst HR policy. The architect of this, Shang Yang, implemented laws so strict that if your neighbor committed a crime and you failed to report them, you'd be cut in half at the waist. Suddenly, everyone was very interested in neighborhood watch. It was this meticulously organized, state-enforced paranoia that allowed the Qin to build an unstoppable military machine. When Qin Shi Huang finally conquered all his rivals in 221 BCE, he didn't relax. He doubled down. He standardized everything. Not just currency and weights, but the width of cart axles. Why? So every cart in the empire would fit into the same ruts on the roads he was building. It's a level of micromanagement that is both genius and insane. He standardized the writing system, which was genuinely useful, but then he decided to standardize thought itself. He ordered a massive book burning, targeting philosophical texts that challenged his legalist views. According to one famous, and probably exaggerated, account by the later Han historian Sima Qian, he also had 460 scholars buried alive. You know, just to make sure the message about not having unapproved ideas was crystal clear. This obsession with control fueled some of history's most ambitious construction projects. The first version of the Great Wall wasn't built by happy volunteers. It was built by hundreds of thousands of conscripted laborers, many of whom died and were just buried within the wall itself. Then there was his tomb, a subterranean palace guarded by over 8,000 unique, life-sized terracotta soldiers, because why not? The historian Sima Qian wrote that the tomb contained rivers of mercury and booby traps. Modern soil tests around the tomb mound show incredibly high mercury levels, suggesting he wasn't making it up. For all his power, the emperor was terrified of death, spending his last years desperately searching for an elixir of immortality, an irony lost on the estimated 1–2 million people who died building his projects. The dynasty itself barely outlived him, collapsing into rebellion just 3 years after his death. After the Qin imploded so spectacularly, China got the Han Dynasty, which lasted 4 centuries and is considered a golden age. The Han publicly rejected everything the Qin stood for, replacing harsh legalism with the much friendlier Confucianism. Except they kept the unified state, the standardized writing, the centralized bureaucracy, the massive infrastructure. They basically took the brutal Qin operating system and just installed a nicer user interface. This pattern is important. But even the Han fell, leading to another few centuries of chaos known as the Northern and Southern Dynasties. It was another period of fragmentation and warfare, a perfect breeding ground for the next great unifier with a terrible plan for the common good. Enter the Sui dynasty in 581 CE. Like the Qin, their job was to stitch a fractured China back together. And like the Qin, they decided the best needle and thread was forced labor and overwhelming state power. The first Sui emperor, Wen, was actually quite competent. He reformed the government, built massive granaries to guard against famine, and generally got things in order. He was also famously frugal, which is a respectable quality in an emperor. His son, Emperor Yang, was not. When Yang took the throne, he looked at his father's full treasury and stable empire and saw a fantastic opportunity to start the most absurdly extravagant projects imaginable. Emperor Yang's magnum opus was the Grand Canal. This wasn't just a ditch, it was a 1,700-kilometer waterway linking the Yellow River in the north to the Yangtze River in the south. An incredible, nation-defining feat of engineering. It was also one of the deadliest construction projects in human history. To build it, he conscripted an estimated 5.5 million people. Every family with more than one son had to send someone. The work was so brutal and the conditions so poor that historical records suggest a mortality rate of around 40 to 50%. That's over 2 million people dead. To move grain, and to make it easier for him to tour his empire in lavish dragon boats. The priorities were, shall we say, skewed. Having a world wonder canal built on a mountain of corpses apparently wasn't enough for Emperor Yang's resume. He needed military glory. So he decided to invade the Korean kingdom of Goguryeo. For his first attempt in 612 CE, he assembled an army so large it's almost unbelievable. The records claim 1,133,800 combat troops. The army was so long it supposedly took 40 days for the first regiment and the last to leave the same point. What could go wrong? Everything. The logistics were a nightmare. The Koreans were brilliant defensive fighters. The campaign was a catastrophic failure, with some reports claiming only a few thousand of the million-plus soldiers made it back. Undeterred, he tried again and again. These pointless wars drained the treasury, starved the populace, and pushed the empire into open rebellion. Emperor Yang was eventually strangled by one of his own generals in 618 CE. The Sui dynasty, after reuniting China, lasted a grand total of 37 years. Sound familiar? And just like the Qin laid the groundwork for the glorious Han, the Sui laid the groundwork for the even more glorious Tang dynasty. The Tang inherited a unified China. They inherited the Grand Canal, which became the economic backbone of their empire for centuries. They learned from the Sui's mistakes and created one of the most brilliant golden ages in Chinese history. It's a deeply uncomfortable lesson in state building. Sometimes the stable, prosperous, and culturally magnificent empires are built upon the foundations laid by short-lived, psychotically brutal ones. It seems the secret ingredient to a long-lasting golden age is a prequel that's an absolute horror show. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!